Okay, so let's review Mike's assessment lesson where I role played his pupil, and I've made some notes, and now I just want to share that with you. Hopefully you've made notes too whilst watching the video, and then we can see how we agree or disagree with what's being said. Please leave comments in the comment section, and obviously please like, subscribe for future content. So let's get started. So let's get into the recap. So just to set the scene again, so the pupil played by me, role played, was a new pupil to Mike, come from another school, so he was having to do a bit of Q&A to find out what I'd done, what I knew, what goals we needed to do. So we just want to comment on the recap on DSSM. Just wanted to pick up on a question that I was asked. Mike said, but you didn't check my seatbelts. Just think of what would be a better way to frame that question. I would ask something like, say to the people, who's responsible for seatbelts and have you checked seatbelts? Just to sort of, rather than accuse the people of not having done something, encourage them to take more responsibility. I think that would have been a better way just to frame that question. So let's look at setting the goals. So Michael at this point didn't know what the people needed. So to find out what the goals would be, we needed to do some kind of drive to establish some goals, some needs. So level of instruction was kind of agreed at independent. So i.e. the people would just sort of drive and get on with it. The people did say that they had issues with their other instructor sort of nitpicking and sort of jumping in and being distracting. So it was good that Michael was picking up on that and allowing me to drive and would only jump in if something dangerous was happening. So I do just want to talk about that in a little bit more detail about how I feel that could have just been done a little bit better. So what do I mean by that? If you think about what happened later on the drive, where there were some things, you're probably thinking, well, I would have said something there, like think about the speed limit. And what about when I moved off, you know, straight away I was pounced on for not checking my blind spot. And we had agreed that I would just be allowed to get on with it. So what I mean by that, what I would be saying to that new pupil there is, okay, you know, I'll give you responsibility for the drive. I want you to drive to the best of your ability, and I will just let you get on with it. With one caveat, if you do anything illegal or dangerous, potentially dangerous, then obviously I will say something. I could either say something verbally to you, or if there was no time, I could do something more physical. I've got dual controls. I could use those, or go, if it was a steering issue, go in and grab the steering wheel. I don't really plan to do that, blah, blah, blah. You know, just to sort of really make that really clear and quite concise about what's going to happen. So, Mr. Pupil, you're going to drive to the best of your ability. I'm going to watch you. I might make notes. Okay, is that okay? Don't feel that you're doing anything wrong if I make notes. And like I said, if you do anything potentially dangerous, illegal, then of course I jump in. What about questions? Can I ask you the odd question as we drive? But I will make sure that I don't distract you. I'll always ask you at an appropriate time. And of course, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. Let's get going. I would have wanted those wheels moving a little bit sooner than they were. So that's what I thought about level of instruction and just getting that just right for the pupil. So yeah, so the next thing I wrote down was the intervention. So in the car park, I was pounced on, and I just felt at that point, okay, was that necessary? So we've got to ask ourselves, was it safety critical? At that moment in time, if I had moved off, would I have affected somebody? Would it have been potentially or actually dangerous? And the answer to that was no. There was no one around. I would have let that one go. I would have let, as per agreement, I would have let the pupil move off and just think, right, later on I'll be talking to him about moving off safely and where should he be looking to do that. I would have only have intervened there had we were actually going to cause someone a problem. Just like an examiner would on a test. They won't intervene if you don't check your blind spots unless they need to. So I felt they're over-instructed, and that kind of put a bit of a sour tone to the sort of lesson because it had just been discussed that I felt my instructor nitpicked, and it was all agreed that I would just be allowed to kind of get on with it. So that's why I say setting the level of instruction just needs to be a bit clearer, so the ground rules were set. Okay, so that was my take on that. Let's move on. Directions. Just made a note about directions because I got a good direction about at the roundabout, turn right. Love it. Then I wanted to follow that car. Not so good. What if that car had gone ahead? What if that car had done a U-turn at the roundabout and come back? Now, Mike would have to change what he just said. So it's always a bit risky saying follow that car because we don't know what that car is going to do. So yeah, just avoid that last sentence, okay? Because it could be confusing. So the next thing I wrote down is driving 30 and a 40. So the pupil wasn't making enough progress. Michael kept quiet. Now at that point, I'm thinking, I would have just asked the question. I'd have said to my pupil, do you know what the speed limit is here? And see what they say. Now, if they said, oh, 30, I would have said, well, actually, it's 40, and then see what they do. Yeah. Now, if they were driving potentially dangerously too slow and affecting other cars and people were going to look to overtake, then I would say, Mr. Pupil, I'd like you to make a little bit more progress here. That is an intervention, or a verbal intervention, because we are potentially causing risk to other road users, causing people to make overtakes which really aren't necessary. Of course, you know, we need to get the flow going. So there wasn't anyone held up for periods of that, so it was okay to let me drive at 30. But yeah, I would have asked and just said, do you know what the speed limit is? Because the people could have said, oh, I didn't realise it was 40 and just crack on. Problem solved. Something then to talk about in the feedback as to the actual problem of awareness of signs. So that was my thoughts on the speed limit. And there were 3 occasions that I was driving 30 and a 40. 2 I thought were worthy of driving fault. On a driving test, that would be. So speed on approach to roundabouts. Okay, so I know it's hard watching the video. Some of those roundabouts were a little bit too quick. But the driver was confident that they were safe gaps. He was, in my opinion, the pupil was driving very well, judging gaps at roundabouts. But did you notice the mistake on the roundabouts? On approach to every one that I did, including the little mini roundabout where I turned right after coming into the 30 before the traffic lights. That one. Now, did anyone notice the fault? I have driven the whole way in 3rd gear. So on approach to roundabouts, yeah, there is. If you're thinking there was something wrong with my approach speed, because Michael was thinking that, but actually that fault hasn't been identified correctly. In part of the MSPSL routine, my speed gear, that is where the fault was. I've stayed in 3rd and I was kind of getting away with it on the bigger roundabouts. But when we got to, so just make that sure that's still recorded. When we got to the mini roundabout, turning right in 3rd gear, high risk of a stall, and that gear pulled me round that roundabout quite quickly. So there, if you're thinking it didn't look right, then you're absolutely on the money. There was something wrong, but we really need to watch that pupil and think, what are they doing? What would I be doing in this situation to make sure it's right? So 3rd gear all the way, dealing with roundabouts. So not really planning an appropriate gear change. Okay. Safety critical fault. Did you spot it? So this was through the road markings. I was exiting a roundabout and the pupil attempted to drive through a solid hatched area, solid lines, do not go in unless it's an emergency. I, as the pupil, was going to go through those. 100% I was going through. The only reason I didn't is because I, the pupil, the trainer, me, felt, well, I can't do that. So I wanted to create the impression that I was going through. I entered that area and was hoping that the instructor would make an intervention and prevent me from doing that illegal maneuver. Now, if you watch the video, what happened at that point, I've gone into it and Mike was unsure of the surroundings and had to look over his shoulder to check if it was safe to intervene. And of course, by that point, I would have gone through. So that tells you two things, that Mike needs to be aware of his surroundings at all times, so that when an intervention is needed, it's timely and appropriate and done safely. He did need to intervene there. I wasn't prepared to break the law. You know, don't want to do that. Not for the sake of a role play. Okay, so that was a big thing. Safety critical. A little bit on braking. Couple of hard brakes, wasn't there? Once at the traffic lights, once at the end at the stop. Talked about the mini roundabout. Yeah, so that's my note. So what I was thinking at the end, what would I have done? I've already shared with you what I'd have done in terms of the responsibilities and who's going to do what, clear ground rules. But let him do the drive. Then when I would have got there, I would have filled out a DL25. Now I'm going to show you that on the screen now and the faults that I would have recorded. Unless, you can play along at home. Pause the video now and think, what faults using a DL25, if you as an examiner, would you have recorded? So this is what I've got. I'm going to put them up on the screen now. So gear fault. I would have recorded, so we're looking in the control section, section 12 of the DL25. One fault for gears for that mini roundabout. That was an inappropriate gear to turn right on a mini roundabout. The gear was pulling me too quickly through. I got away with it on the other occasions. Okay, so I've only recorded one fault there. Foot brake, just under that. I've recorded two faults, quite hard braking, yeah? You could hear that water bowl sloshing around and rolling around. Where was that water bowl? Incidentally, that water bowl was the trainer's water bowl. Now, where was that? That was rolling round in the back. Could that roll under a seat, go on the pedals? That needs to be secure. So that's, honestly, seriously, think about these things. These the small details. You don't want things rolling around your back seat because that could, that's not going to end well, is it, if it goes under a brake pedal? Okay, so I got a couple of faults for brakes. So just making sure it's recording. Moving off safely. No, one fault from the car park at the beginning. Response to road markings. Serious fault. Went through a solid hatch. Examiner should have took action. Instructor should have taken action. Progress, undue hesitation. I marked two faults there. There were 3 occasions I was doing it, but I thought 2 of those were worthy of quite long roads where I was really not making enough progress. One time I said I was doing 34 in a 40, but I thought it was 30. That was the short gap in between the 2 roundabouts after the road markings incident. So now I actually made a bit of decent progress because I needed to move from the right lane to the left and I needed to match the speed of other traffic. So I actually kind of did get on with it enough, which I thought, Mr. Pupil, I exceeded the speed limit and kind of apologised for that. But I wasn't, was I? So that's why the question would have been good earlier about, do you know what the speed limit is here? Because then I would have confidently been able to get on with it. And that's it. So I've got there a total of, let me just count, I think it's 6. So we've got 1 fault in gears, 2 in foot brake, that's 3, moving off safety 4, 5, 6 undue hesitation, 2 in undue hesitation, and the 7th fault, which is a serious fault where I should have intervened. So look on the DL25. On the right-hand column towards the bottom, you've got a column marked ETA. Does anyone know what ETA stands for? You've got a V next to it and a P. So in case you don't know, let's just share that with you. Examiner took action either verbally or physically. We've already discussed that their intervention would have been necessary, either verbal or physical. I think because it had allowed to get me into that hatched area, that would be a physical get me out. I don't think he would have had enough time to verbally do that. I think by the time the words had left his mouth, I would have been through. So that would have been a physical intervention. Okay, other little bits and bobs that I want to talk about. The timings. So that was a 33-minute video of 7 minutes of which I drove. So in percentage term, that's 20% drive, 80% talking, which should really be the other way around. Yeah. So we need less talking, more focused Q&A. Let's get those wheels moving sooner. Fault ID, in summary, yeah, we talked about that. Some missed faults in terms of gear, incorrect gear selection. So really watch me and let's not miss any of those faults. Some misidentified faults in terms of it was speed, should have been gear. So that's what I'm coming from there. Level of instruction, as I've already discussed, I felt over-instructed with the blind spot, but then under-instructed on the road markings, don't let me break the law, and the speed limit. A little bit of a guide, a little bit of a prompt. Howard, what's going on? Do you know what the speed limit is? And then that could have been problem solved, done. Maybe on the way to help you remember faults is make notes, because as I sort of commented at the end, there was only one fault made in the notes. So yeah, you maybe use a DL25, but get them down. Don't let the writing of faults distract you. You still got to watch the people. You still got to pick your moment when you're going to do that. But you can't afford to forget what the faults are. With practice, this gets easier, where you can just sit in a car, do a 20-minute assessment, get to the end, get a DL25, just pop them in. Because you kind of remember, you do it every day. Examiners, they're the same. They could just sit in a test, watch it all and think, you know what, I'll just do my paperwork, do it. You know, that's your faults. I remember where they were, what you did, because they do it every day. When you're new to this, it's a new skill, so get out, use it, get familiar, know your way around the DL25 so you can see where they all are, because then you get quicker at doing it, and you keep your eyes on the road for longer. You just glance down, mark a strike rather than a word on a notepad. So it's a little bit easier, shorthand. So we talked about level of instruction, over, under. Feedback, yeah, the feedback was too long. I thought we could have just really focused on what was wrong. So in summary there, my feedback to that pupil, and I will be quick, would have really been about, okay, Howard, from my observations, these are the faults, blah, blah, blah. So what we need to work on is your awareness of signs, speed limits, and your awareness of road markings and what they mean and what you can and can't do. We need to think about your gear selection. So we're going to look at MSPSL, particularly the speed/gear section, and how we're going to help you with that. We can think about your braking. Is it just because you're getting used to the car? Could we introduce like 3-phase braking to make that a little bit smoother? Give an objective, give a goal to it. And blind spot before moving off. Did he forget? Just a bit of Q&A on that. What are the risks? Which Michael did in the car park, all very good. So basically I would have just left that chat to the end because it wasn't safety critical. And that's that. So thanks for watching. I hope you find that's useful. Please like, subscribe, comment for future content, and yeah, get out there and practice. Get using the DL25, set your levels of instruction and stick to it. Make it clear ground rules. That's what we need. Thank you very much.